Good morning, afternoon, evening, beautiful beings. Welcome back to another spiritual Q&A, a spiritual love Q&A. These are the types of live shows where I am holding space, creating some energetic love to answer questions from you, some questions related to spirituality, love, emotions, relationship, and everything in between. So I'm so excited to have you here today. I have an array of some beautiful questions already submitted, and I can't wait to get into them with you. If you're joining live today, I see you there, Angelic Harmonies. Welcome, my friend. If you're joining live today and you have questions that come up, pop them in and I'll insert them as I flow. If you're watching the replay, add future questions into the comment section, and I'll add them into the next lives that I'll do here. I plan to do these downloads and transmissions quite frequently over the next couple of weeks, so don't worry, I'll get to your beautiful requests when they come through. All right, so let's get straight into it because I've got a lot to get through and I'm really grateful for them. So thank you for all the love coming through as well. I see those comments. The first question here today is from the beautiful Ray, and Ray asks, how to self-regulate when feeling other people's energies? How to self-regulate when feeling other people's energies? The first part of this answer is a remembrance of something very important, and that is the remembrance that in your reality, right, because we're all creating individual expressions of the one expression, the one God, divine consciousness, the field. In your unique reality, you are the most powerful being. You are the most powerful aspect of consciousness. So when we're asking ourselves, how do we regulate when we take on other people's negativity, take on other people's shadows, take on other people's pain, trauma, etc., the first step is remembering our power. The first step is remembering our potential. The first step is remembering our ability to change. Because if we can't remember, if we're not in that state, where are we? We're most likely in the victim, right? We're most likely in the opposite of all of that. Right? The opposite being, oh, this thing has power over me. This person has power over me. This emotion has power over me. This thought form has power over me, etc. So the first step will always be remembering that power, taking it back, and then from there, that might be enough, right? That might be enough to regulate, because when we remember the power that we already are, consciousness and ignition, light moves through us. But let's say that's not enough and you still feel overwhelmed by other people's shit. Then the next thing I would say is to connect back in to your breath, right? The breath will be your superpower in these moments of regulation, right? In these moments of needing to come back to homeostasis and balance. Right? It could be as simple as a deep inhale through the nose into the belly and an extra long exhale through the mouth. Right? It could be as simple as that. If you need more, right, what I tend to do is in that same breath and breathing in and breathing out, closing your eyes, connecting to that higher power again, but seeing it come in through your crown, dropping into your heart, and then as you breathe out, you're releasing that shadow, right? You're releasing that negativity, you're releasing that thought form, you're releasing that density, whatever it is, right? So your breath will be your superpower of regulation. All right, welcome, Oriane, I see you there, my friend. Welcome, Paul. Welcome, Haley. Nice to see you. Dr. Haley, I haven't connected in a while. Thank you for popping in. If you have questions today, I have some here I'm reading and answering, but if something pops up in this spiritual love Q&A, I'd love to connect into it. Paul, you're from London, welcome. You're asking, am I religious? Very good question. I would say in certain cases, yes. In certain cases, no. I tend to prescribe myself to all of the religions because I tend to relate to all of them in a certain way. So when I find myself in a religious environment, say at a temple or a mosque or a church, my heart is definitely pulled to that environment. But then in other instances, when I read a lot of religious scripture, I find a lot of separation within that scripture. I find a lot of running away from God, right? From man-made belief systems. So yes and no, Paul. At the deepest level, I sort of come back to a lot of mystical, spiritual teachings that really helps my heart connect to God. Good question. Okay, next question I have here from some questions that have been submitted before. Again, if things pop up for you, pop them in the comments. Next question is from Ray. Again, Ray asks, how do we decipher, this is a good question, how do we decipher between what is the ego speaking and what is our intuition? How do we decipher between what is our ego and what is our intuition speaking? I think this is a question that I used to most commonly have for myself, and I most commonly get when I interact and support and help people. There's a simple answer to this and a more complex answer, so we'll do both. The simple answer is looking at the results of the choice you make from the voice. Looking at the results from the choice you make from the voice. So, let's a super simple, basic example. Let's say you have a chocolate bar in front of you, right? And you're tuning in and you're asking, in this moment, based off how I'm emotionally feeling, how I'm mentally feeling, how I'm physically feeling, in this moment, is this chocolate bar best for me? And you're tuning in, trying to work out, is it my ego saying yes, or is it my intuition / soul saying yes? You take the yes, you eat the chocolate, and then after it, how do you feel? What is the result of the voice and the choice you then made? This is the easiest way to sort of tune in and start deciphering between your two voices. The ego is, I would describe, as it often gives us short-term gains, but leads to long-term suffering, leads to long-term challenges. The intuition / soul often is challenging in the moment, right? Stepping into fear, right? Jumping on a plane, going overseas, maybe applying for a job, maybe talking to that person that you want to get into a relationship with. Challenging in the moment, in the short term, but leads to long-term expansion, leads to long-term consciousness heightening, leads to long-term spirit, soul evolution. Right? So that's the short, easy distinction between the ego voice and the intuition soul voice. The deeper way that we can actually start to tune into these two voices is actually starting to feel them. And this is a muscle that we all can learn to build. Like any muscle, it requires practice, it requires devotion. The ego often expresses itself internally with a feeling of contraction, with a feeling of decompression, with a feeling of smallness, with a feeling of lowness, right? And this will express through you in its own unique way, right? The spirit, the soul, usually expresses through expansion, usually expression through a heightened state, usually expresses through a floaty, blissful state, right? And again, this will express through you in your own individual way. So this is sort of the deepening version of this question, how we can learn to find distinctions between the intuition, spirit, and the ego. Shahar, welcome. See you there, my friend. Angelic, happy the explanation resonated. Okay, Paul, you're asking, this is a good question. Paul, you're asking, you're moving through complex PTSD, 52, and suffering from childhood trauma, feeling overwhelmed and low self-worth because of marriage breakdown. Any thoughts? Well, first of all, Paul, sending a lot of love, a lot of compassion, a lot of beautiful vibes your way. I really honor you for sharing this in a public space, so holding space for that. I mean, this is a very complex question and not something I can break down in 2 minutes on a live, but I'll give you my channels and thoughts in the moment, right? Because that's what you're asking for. The first place to begin is finding a safe container, right? Because any kind of trauma, whether it be from relationships, whether it be from childhood abuse, whether it be from, any kind of past, and I use my fingers here very specifically because nothing is the past when it comes to the heart, right? All trauma is here in the now, which is why we have things like PTSD, right? It's acting in the now because it's here in the now. The first step will always be finding safe space. And I want to go deeper into this because not all space is safe. Not all people that will create space for you are right for you. Right? There is, in my experience, in my opinion, there is a specific person that is right for you at this moment in your journey to help you with these kinds of challenges. Right? This connects back to our intuition and our spirit and soul guiding us. Our soul, our spirit, knows the medicine that it needs. And when it comes to trauma, our soul and spirit will direct us towards the medicine, usually in the form of a person, that is best for us right now. But in relation to the soul and the spirit, it will always be our choice to listen to that. Right? We're not judged either way, but it will continue to speak to support us in that choice. So, summarizing here, Paul, the step I would take if I was in your situation, and if you read my book, I have been in a similar situation, is feeling into the specific medicine and space of another that is needed for you to use as a reflection to move through these current pains, these current challenges, these current past moments coming up. And I'll say one more thing because, again, this is a big topic, but I want to give even more love here. It's also remembering when it comes to things like childhood trauma that we are never given what we are not ready for. We are never given what we are not ready for. Often when childhood trauma surfaces in a memory or PTSD symptoms or a certain triggered response, an event, it is not coming up for no reason. It is not coming up to keep us in a fight or flight overwhelmed state. It is coming up, in my experience, because now is the moment in our soulful journey, in our spiritual journey, that we're ready to move through it. Right? And that readiness might involve another person, but it's important to acknowledge that we're ready to go. Right? We have the power to step into it. We have the potential and the healing capacity to move through the shadow, move through the darkness. Hope that helps, Paul. Thank you for asking. Welcome, Shani. I see you there, my friend. Welcome, Joe. all the friends popping in. A quick little reset for people joining. This is Spiritual Love Q&A. I am creating a bit of space here to answer some questions I've already been submitted and questions that come in from you. If you have something on your heart in regards to spirituality, love, emotions, relationships, and everything in between, pop it in as we go and I'll channel and give some guidance. You're welcome, Paul. Happy it brought a light bulb. Okay. Next question from the Joyous You space, Ishita, my friend, asks how, and this connects perfectly to the question that you just asked, Paul, how do we transform shadows of discord? How do we transform shadows of discord? And I'm going to answer this broadly because the answer is the same for all shadows. We transform the shadows within us from a space of unconditional love. We transform shadows within us from a space of unconditional love. Let me break that down. All shadows are us. All shadows are aspects of us. So the shadow of a childhood trauma, the shadow of discord, the shadow of judgment, the shadow of rejection, the shadow of abandonment, the shadow of I'm not enough, I'm not worthy, I'm not lovable, right? All examples are all aspects of us. The quickest way to not move through a shadow, the quickest way to hold on to a shadow, the quickest way to stay in the reality of the shadow is to judge it, to blame it, to shame it, to suppress it, to ignore it, to pretend it doesn't exist. So, what is the opposite of all that? The opposite is acceptance. The opposite is surrender. The opposite is loving observation. The opposite is compassionate and a kind-based mindfulness. All of these are a consciousness state that we can bring to moments of shadow activation. What is shadow activation? Shadow activation would be a trigger, would be a moment in which you spoke to someone, or you're doing an activity, or you're moving through life, and you feel that shadow come up. You feel that discord. You feel that childhood trauma. You feel that limiting belief. So the key to the shadow transformation is, first of all, getting out of the old patterns of blaming, shaming, and judgment. Because we all do this. I do this. Right? We judge ourselves for being in that state. And in that moment, we add more layers of separation onto the pain, onto the darkness. So I spoke about this in my last Q&A a lot. I'd go back and listen to that one. I talked about shadow work in more detail, but that is really where I would start. All right, let's keep going. Next question. And this one is from Angelic Harmonies. Thank you, my friend, for another beautiful question. This one is, when it's time to let something go, what helps you to follow through with aligned action? When it's time to let something go, what helps you to follow through with aligned action? All right, good question. So often when we are letting something go, often when we are releasing something, there is a need for forgiveness. So I would say the first step here, when we want to release something and step into action, inspired action, in between that, there is often a moment of forgiveness needed. Because, as I spoke to a second ago, the letting go is often letting go of something related to judgment or shame or guilt or something we've pushed down onto ourselves. We've thought it was someone else, but in reality it was a choice we were making. So forgiveness is often a medicine that we can inject between the surrender and the letting go and the action that then occurs. So it can be as simple as placing your hands on your heart, and the Ho'oponopono prayer is a beautiful example of something we could use in that moment, and applying forgiveness, applying the medicine of self-forgiveness. In that forgiveness, something very special occurs. In that forgiveness, we raise our consciousness, right? We vibrate higher. And when we vibrate higher, as is the scale of consciousness, we open to what? We open to divine connection. We open to divine channels, divine downloads, divine insights, intuition. And it's in these downloads, it's in these channels, it's in these insights that we're then able to make action with, take action on. So it's a reminder here that often what leads us into action, inspired action, is the raising of consciousness through an act of love, in this case, forgiveness. So if you're looking to surrender, let something go, the beautiful action we can take to receive more action is acts of love, right? Acts of forgiveness, acts of self-compassion, acts of self-kindness. And that opens us up to receive the intuition that we need in that moment. Angelic, yes, letting go of guilt, right? It's a perfect example. So that guilt around whatever the event is needs your self-forgiveness, and then once that self-forgiveness is applied, the channel opens. Angelic, you're saying when you were speaking on divine downloads, I could see my throat chakra opening by connecting with the higher vibration. Thank you so much. Yeah, perfect. It's the beautiful example. Right, and I'll say one more thing on this because it's resonating. This is not a general thing. What I mean by this is the acts of kindness and the acts of self-forgiveness, self-compassion, they will all look different for all of us. It's up to us to work out what is the best way to self-soothe, right? To self-love, to self-applicate love, to feel it. We will all have a unique version of this. And it changes, right? It changes throughout our life. But it comes with practice. It comes with devotion, self-devotion. Each act of self-love builds this, and it becomes a muscle. So in moments of needing to take action, the muscle activates, and we know what to do. We know what to apply, what medicine to apply to ourselves, so it moves, so the action, the inspiration, the higher consciousness can move through us. All right. Good question. Happy it helped. Ooh, a few more. Let's keep going. If you're joining live, welcome. I see your beautiful faces down there. If you have questions today for this spiritual love Q&A, pop them in as we go. If I don't get to yours today, leave them in the replay of this, and I will get to them in the next live. And I'm very grateful that you're holding space with me. I hope it's giving value. Okay, next up here. This is from Lokindra. Lokindra asks, how to move on from a relationship which was one of the best you had in your life? How do we move on from a relationship that was one of the best in our life? A beautiful question, and something that we all deal with, myself included. I often, in these examples, in these situations, think of a story, an image, a metaphor. And it is the image and the metaphor of the train conductor moving down the tracks of life. And the train conductor and the train that he is moving is stopping at all of these beautiful stations along the life journey. At each station along this journey, he is picking up passengers. These passengers represent lovers, friends, people that you interact with that become beautiful relationships and learnings and teachings within your life. As the conductor of the train moves down the tracks of life, each of these passengers will either get off at certain stations, stay longer, and make choices in between based off what their journey asks of them. The train conductor has one responsibility. The train conductor has the sole responsibility of keeping the train on the track and moving towards where it needs to go. So this beautiful image and this beautiful story highlights something very significant in relation to this question and the beautiful connections that we have throughout our life. It highlights that each relationship comes with beautiful lessons and experiences and the exchange of love. But what each relationship also comes with is a certain time frame, is a certain duration in which the love will move. And it is up to us to detach our value and our worth from however long that connection will be. Right? Because if we're stuck in someone leaving or someone coming, what we're also doing in that moment is not being open to what else is coming our way. So this doesn't mean not acknowledging, not celebrating, not becoming grateful for all the people that are in our lives. But what it does mean is we can learn to be the conductor of the train who has the sole responsibility of his or her own soul path. So just to add a bit more to this, my friend, when we hold on to emotion from something ending, like a relationship that held a lot of beautiful passion and pleasure and positivity, what we're holding on to is not the person. What we're holding on to is the story that we've created around the person. And that story, we will always have a choice to either hold on to or release. If that story is causing us pain, if that story is causing us suffering, if that story is causing us an inability to meet new people or to live our lives, then we must remember our power to let go. We must remember our power to release. And we must remember that in that release and in that letting go, that is not devoid of love. That doesn't mean we don't love that original person. It just means we desire to continue our journey of life and we're open to receiving more love, not less. So I hope that helps. Next question. There's a theme today. I think you'll pick it up. Next question is from the beautiful Shahar, and Shahar asks, how do we make a choice in times where it is, and you've written, which is very interesting, and I'll point out why in a second, you've written, in times where it is all possible. How do we make a choice in times where it is all possible? I assume what you mean is in times where it is all impossible. But it's interesting that you wrote in times where it's all possible, because that is the truest reality, right? The truest reality is infinite possibility, which is the answer to this question, right? The question is, how to make a choice in times where it feels so much, where it feels so impossible. The first answer is remembering that you are born from infinite creation. You are born from divine possibility. So when life appears, because that's what it is, it's an appearance of impossibility. It's an appearance of I can't do this. It's an appearance of inability to step forward. When that is the case, it's a coming back, it's a dropping into the heart and remembering that all of that is an illusion, that you are born from, born with, and born to share infinite creativity, infinite possibility, infinite expansion. And we all have our own life situations. We all have things going on that pushes us down. But what we also all have is the choice to remember our light, is the choice to remember the consciousness of infinity that we're born from. And that might require more practically here, right? More practically here as an example of describing how to move through this toughness of life. More practically, this might mean speaking to someone, right? More practically, this might mean taking a break, right, and going within. More practically, this might mean, releasing through the mouth, right? Taking a deep breath in, connecting to nature. These are all practical examples of how to release the overwhelm of too muchness. But whatever it is for you, it first begins with a choice to move through it. So, just another tip here. We must make that choice, because what we often do in times of overwhelm, in times of too muchness, in times of overbearing external shadow, what we often always do is become the victim of external events. We become the victim of the too muchness, the overwhelm. We think that life is happening to us instead of for us. So we first must make the choice to release that illusion. Then from there, take the action that is needed, or the inaction in the case of meditation, to connect to the real reality that we are from. Cynthia, you're asking a connected question here. Rewriting the story. Can you provide a prompt specifically for ending a relationship? Okay, good question. So when we're talking about ending a relationship and any stories that are connecting to it, I'll just give some examples in my life. When I've ended a relationship, often stories of rejection, stories of abandonment, stories of I'm unlovable, I'm not enough, I am unworthy to be loved come up, right? These are examples. So some prompts here to rewrite these stories is first beginning with, okay, if those are my current reality, if those were not true, what would be the actual reality? Well, the actual reality is that I'm eternally lovable. I am worthy of infinite love. I am safe in my body, right? I am seen, I am heard, I am welcomed, right? These are just things coming through in this moment, but the example here and the prompt I would give to go deeper into these is connecting into those 3 lower chakra centers, and they will give you even more guidance, right? That solar plexus, sacral, and root, which govern these connections to your lovers, your connections to your self-worth, your connections to that beautiful sexual connection. Those will give you unique prompts. Because it's one thing for me to offer general prompts, which definitely work and can be applied. You begin with that, but I would encourage you to connect into those energy centers and find unique prompts based off the exact moment that you're in. Because your body, which where these energy centers we connect to, right? Your body tells the story of your life. Your body keeps score. So if it wishes to speak through you in the way of rewriting a story or journaling, writing, expressing through journaling, it will give you those answers. So another practical example here would be in a relationship ending and rewriting stories. We're placing your hands on that belly area, that sacral, lower abdomen area, that root center, sexual organs, and asking, right, what is the truth that needs to be expressed? What is the shadow that needs to be released, right? And writing and or expressing through your words. That would be another way to rewrite the limiting stories. Hope that helps. Okay, one more question here today to finish. Beautiful beings, thank you for holding space. And I hope it's bringing value. Beautiful. Last question, and I promise, I said there's a theme. Last question is from Ishita again. How do I start measuring my worth again? How to come out of that loop? How to start measuring my worth and how to get out of the loop. I assume the loop here is negative self-worth, right? Losing what your worth actually is. So how do we start measuring our worth? How do we start connecting into self-worth that is, I would say, accurate? Cynthia, you're just asking, I hope I can re-listen to this. Yes, I'm going to repost this as a replay, so definitely, don't worry. Speaking a lot, you can go back and watch it all. So how do we connect into our self-worth? How do we start to actually align ourselves with the worth that we are? Well, once again, it is remembering, reconnecting, realigning with divine truth. And divine truth is that you are infinitely worthy, infinitely valuable, and infinitely loved. Step one. Step two is, okay, if I have faith that in that reality, despite parts of me not believing that, despite parts of me holding limiting beliefs around that being the opposite, if I have faith in that divine truth of me, what would that look like if that were true? What would it look like if I was infinitely worthy, infinitely valuable, infinitely loved? So what you can do as a journaling exercise, as a practice here, write examples of what that looks like in your life within specific contexts. Right? So if you were infinitely worthy, infinitely valuable, infinitely loved in your relationships with your partner, how would that express itself? If you were infinitely lovable, infinitely worthy, infinitely valuable, how would that look within interactions with your family, right? If you were infinitely lovable, infinitely worthy, infinitely valuable, what would that look like in the choices that you make around your occupation, around your work, right? And write that down. Remembering that in each instance in which you write this reality, write this example, and you infuse it with your intention of worthiness, enoughness, love, when you infuse it with your intention of all those things, it becomes real. It becomes your reality. So we connect into these measures of worth, these measures of value, these measures of love by creating them through our expression, right? And expression can be writing, speaking, acting. We connect to them, we connect to our value, we connect to our worth, we connect to our love from a place that it's already true. And that place is within. That place is within your heart. It's nothing external. It's nothing outside of you. You don't need to go get your worth. You don't need to go prove your value. You don't need to go get your love from an outside source. It's already waiting to be tapped into. So you need to make the choice here to tap into it. And then from that place, move. All right. Welcome, Damien. Just about to finish, but you're here. I love you, my friend. I hope this live brought some value today. A lot of questions, a lot of beautiful insights. I appreciate you for submitting these questions. I appreciate you showing up live and adding your questions. If you want to ask more, I will be doing these lives quite frequently. So add them into the comment section of the replay and I'll add them into the next one. But either way, I love you very much. I appreciate you. And until next time, I'll see you again very soon. Bye, everyone.